Crack Miser 1976 is a 67-second long video from a now silent channel by the name of HoboHobo. Created in December of 2023, it's animated to mimic the style of the 1970s Rankin Bass Christmas specials and parodies the original Snow Miser song. And today I'm going to explain why it's so perfect and why I've listened to it 357 times. Hey everybody! My name is Why Not, and this is my watch history. So I found this video sometime around June, because somehow the Christmas season always starts months early. I've wanted to start doing video essays like this for a while, and I thought it'd be hilarious to start off by overanalyzing 58 seconds worth of animation. And considering how many times I've watched this, we've got a lot to cover. Let's start with a little history. For those who didn't grow up with these cultural masterpieces, the Rankin Bass Christmas specials are a series of stop-motion animation films that started off in the early 60s and have been aired on a number of major networks every December since. These included Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, The Little Drummer Boy, Rudolph 2, Rise of the Sith, Santa's Trip to Vietnam. These kinda go on for a while. But my favorite was The Year Without Santa Claus. The basic plot is this. Kids are believing in Santa less and less, so the big guy decides he needs a vacation. Meanwhile, two elves set it upon themselves to bring the belief of magic back to Christmas. This eventually results in a miracle of snow in a hot southern town. God, I wish I could get that kind of miracle wherever southern state I live in. Anyway, it's a happy story with plenty of iconic music. But what I didn't mention is where that miracle came from. Along the way, the elves find themselves in the middle of a sibling rivalry between the Miser brothers, the two elemental magic makers who control weather extremes. They're pretty easy to follow characters. Snow Miser controls the snow for the freezing areas of the world, and Heat Miser controls the heat for the hotter areas of the world. And they both have a cheery little song to explain this.
I'm Mr. White Christmas. I'm Mr. Snow. I'm Mr. Icicle. I'm Mr. Ten Below. They call me Heat Miser. Whatever I touch starts to melt in my clutch. I'm too much.
34 years later, these songs would be mashed together for a remix duet in A Miser Brothers Christmas. That actually puts it around 2008. I think I accidentally caught the first showing of this one when I was a child. Neat! As with all great things in life, the Miser brothers became a bit of a meme. Mainly Snow Miser. I chalk that up to a mix of popularity and low attention span since he's kind of always the first to sing. That said, there's also been a number of duet covers online, which I'm sure you guys have seen en masse every December or so. Shout out to all of you who make those, they're amazing. But for Snow Miser, there were a dozen edits made to the original song in the last few years. Intruder Miser, Delta Miser, Roller Miser, Pack Miser, dear goodness, this actually goes on for a while. But the one you've most likely heard making the rounds is High Miser, mainly due to the two types of pet meme that you've likely seen on Instagram or TikTok.
I'm Mr. White Christmas, I'm high on crack.
This meme uses an audio clip with no real cited origin, but supposedly the original Crack Miser dub on YouTube was done by a YouTube creator named the Unshaken VA, whose channel went offline sometime in the last year. I tried my hardest to pull up some visuals, but the Wayback Machine really didn't want to help me out. For a good while, this was the most popular iteration of the meme. That was, however, until about a year later, when HoboHobo sat down to create his own version. Finally, we get to talk about the actual video. Jeez, it's been
4 minutes and 6 seconds.
And all I've done is give you guys a history lesson. Let's start off by talking about the overall design. While this is kind of a brand new take on the meme, it's still centered around Snow Miser, not some new Miser brother that uses cocaine instead of snow or fire. He tells us right off the bat that he's Mr. White Christmas himself, and impressive work went into making that obvious. Although there have been a few different puppets over the last few decades, Crack Miser is based off the original from The Year Without Santa Claus. You can tell by the angular cheekbones, pointed nose, and less stylized strands of hair. Speaking of, let's take a closer look at the changes that HoboHobo took to make Snow Miser into Crack Miser. I'm Mr. White Christmas, I'm high on crack. So I already brought up how his hair is made of ice, but an obvious visual change is the fact that they've gone from an icy helmet of hair to just a few icicles. This gives off the appearance that he's losing his hair, a natural physical change of overusing crack. Fun fact, it's actually because cocaine usage blocks the absorption of nutrients needed for hair growth, leading to thinning, loss, and severe damage to the hair follicles. Actually, that's not a fun fact, that's just upsetting. But now you know. Just make sure not to get addicted before you reach hair loss. Your constant shakes will look crazy enough with your hair. Another interesting detail is the cracks along his hair, which give the appearance of filthy ice instead of the perfectly opaque ice we're used to seeing it as. This is another one of those details that just adds to the fact that this is a snow miser who's trailed a much darker path. Keeping in line with the drug-based design choices, the melted shine along his features are reminiscent of a paranoid man strung out in the gutter sweating bullets. This next one's an animation detail, but whereas Snow Miser Classic almost never blinks, because that would be a lot more work for the animators, Crack Miser actually blinks constantly and frantically, like he's suffering from paranoia. Speaking of his eyes, the black eyelids are an interesting one, being another mild symptom of too much nose candy. It could also be due to an overabundance of alcohol, maybe he's smoking the crack instead of just snorting it, sleep deprivation, some damage from the long days and nights in the alleyways, or I could be reading way too deeply into it, and it's just because the black lids look really cool with his appearance. But where's the fun in that? Let's keep going! His facial features have moved beyond the look of an old man sculpted out of ice, becoming sharper, more pronounced as if he's withering away, or in his case, melting. For those of you who didn't watch this nearly as much as I did, one feature I love that I didn't realize till my 5th or 6th time watching is that Crack Miser's almost completely naked, save for an open blue coat and his shoes. I mean, you gotta wear your shoes, he's a drug addict, not a psycho. Speaking of which, there's likely a reason for his little pixel skirt. A small detail you likely missed was the fact that he's actually still hooked up to an IV bag, as if he'd just escaped from a hospital or a methadone clinic. If he was, he likely had to have been stripped down and stuck into a medical gown. And the moment he was alone, everything that he touched, he sold to buy more drugs, escaping and happily taking the IV with him. He basically admitted it after all. He says himself he's Mr. ICU when he points to the IV. Overall, it's a pretty fantastic design change. You really gotta hand it to HoboHobo here. Now that that's out of the way, let's finally get on to the main part of this minute-long masterpiece, the animation and the music.
Bye, Mr. White Christmas. I'm high on crack.
As I brought up before, the video was animated to mimic the classic Rankin Bass style, and this actually managed to fool a few audience members who believed some guy on YouTube actually took the time to perfect his claymation skills for a meme. But the whole thing is actually just expertly created using 3D rendering software and some clever video editing tricks to capture the cheap feeling of those timeless classics. I actually used similar editing techniques a few months back when I created Doe, my first attempt at claymation. But more than that, you can tell extra care went into Snow Miser's movements. When he first wakes up, it's business as usual. It's his song, albeit not what it once was. As he dances, his movements are stiff and a little rigid, both mirroring the slow movements of the original song and dance, and paralleling the joint pain of someone who just had a relaxing 10-hour coma in a urine-soaked gutter. This is evidenced by the stark contrast of how excitable and exaggerated his movements get when he's motivated by his crack. And throughout the entire process, his movements are never smooth, always choppy and fast, like the work of an animation medium that's completely incapable of utilizing motion blur or onion skinning. Really, I can't give high enough props to HoboHobo for the amount of skill put towards going backwards in 3D animation. Bravo! Lastly, we gotta talk about the song itself. The original music used in Crack Miser 1976 was an edit of a cover originally created by Cassier Sauerkraut on YouTube. I really hope I didn't butcher your name, I'm sorry. Once it was in the hands of HoboHobo, it went through a minor change to give it a more broken and almost lethargic feeling, sort of like if the music itself was drunkenly stumbling through the staff of the sheet music. It's a small change, but you can't convince me it doesn't add more personality than Cassier's original cover. No offense, of course. But the real work is all in the new lyrics, and a few of the commenters picked up on this pretty easily over the last year. Instead of friends call me, he says they call me, likely because no one cares about him anymore. Any friends he had, he likely stole from, lied to, or used for crack money. Instead of I'm too much, he says it's never enough. An obvious 180 from the silly matter of ironically saying he's a lovable scamp who's too cold for everyone else, to genuinely saying he's a lovable scamp that needs more drugs or something terrible is going to happen to you and your family. Either way, it's pretty cheery, kind of like Duolingo reminding you to do your homework, only less off-putting and ominous. The rhymes are all on point throughout the song, and vocals are truly impressively sung, whether it's the perfect main lines or his ability to go from harmonic to manic in an instant. But it's the bridge of the song that really makes this video perfect.
Hi, Mr. White Christmas. I'm high on crack.
Alright, time to come clean. Beyond the visual appearances, the music, and the animation, this was the part that made me want to make this video in the first place, long before I started doing research. It was an idea that hit me the very first time I saw it, and to my surprise, I didn't see any comments talking about it. As he snorts his next dime bag, Snow Miser is sent into a frenzy, sputtering on the ground. Now this is usually the part of the song where his minions come out and sing chorus. But the thing is, they're all exactly as strung out as he is. Now, the Miser minions are always meant to be near-perfect models of their counterparts, only with subtle differences, be it clothing, bone structure, anything really. They all look exactly the same as each other, but not the Miser brother they serve. Yet here, they're all one-to-one models, each with little shoes, coats, and 4 tiny little groin pixels. Now, you could say that the hats are different, but that's just another clever nod to the original. They need the hats for the dance, it's in the choreography. I could sit here and just chalk it up to the fact that this video was something short and simple HoboHobo made for the holiday season last year, so we didn't feel like making different models and just shrunk Crack Miser down and copy-pasted his animation a few times. But that would be boring. So instead, here's a different idea. Snow Miser has Snow Miser minions. Heat Miser has Heat Miser minions. So why would Snow Miser, dealing with drug abuse, have Crack Miser minions? If he weren't a Snow Miser, it makes sense for a crack addict miser to have minions just as bad as he is. But in reality, they should all still look like mini Snow Misers who've led slightly better lives. So what if instead, Snow Miser no longer has any minions? We already learned he no longer has friends of any kind. Maybe that applies to his little helpers too. What if this isn't the standard chorus we're all used to, and these are just the delusions of a drug addict? After all, they only show up to sing after he's had his next fix. And as we slowly zoom in on the face of a once great man, the music's swelling while he's helpless to do anything, really, how could you think anything else? I've always been a massive fan of claymation, and I respect the hell out of anyone who makes an honest effort at it. So naturally, I've always been a big fan of these Christmas specials, and I was immediately drawn to this little animated short. Hobo, if by some miracle you stumble across this video, I want to say thank you for the fun shorts you made over the last few years. And I hope that whatever you're up to now, you're having fun and feeling more relaxed. Crack Miser is a meme that's been circling around for a good few years, and I can't see a version of the joke that's funnier than this. But those are just my thoughts on the matter. Your homework for this video? Head into the comments and tell me what all details I missed, and if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. I certainly had fun making it, but that's really all I have to say. I've been Why Not, and I hope you've been entertained this year. Good night, everybody!